Of January 9, 2023, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, for 30 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to, now as we wrap up this week in Congress, I'd like to address some issues that I feel have not been discussed as much as they should be in the chamber this week, and look forward to the issues being highlighted when we return from our break 10 days from now. First of all, I'd like to discuss the very concerning memos coming out of the Richmond office of the FBI. The FBI has kind of embarrassed us over the last year in that there are areas which I would consider more political in nature, but the FBI, perhaps like their counterparts in China or Russia, seem to go after people for what they think more than what they do. And we found out in the last month that they have decided to equate traditional Catholics with groups that ought to be monitored so that they don't do anything too untoward. In their memo, they implied that perhaps traditional Catholics, without evidence that I know, may be opponents to affirmative action, like the majority of Americans. They may not be all on board with the LGBTQ agenda. They may not be thrilled with President Biden's immigration policy. And horror of horrors, they might like to attend a service with Latin Mass. The idea that these conservative Catholics, and I am not Catholic personally, but I have friends who I think would consider themselves conservative Catholics. The idea that they would consider conservative Catholic in line with being an enemy of the state is incredibly scary. I mean, I know traditional Catholics will not do very well in communist China today, and that is perhaps not surprising. It's one of the reasons why we worry about what goes on in China. But it is very scary that this administration would be targeting conservative Catholics for additional monitoring. And it's something that we should be very mindful of. It's something we should insist end. They have said that they are revoking the memo, which is nice. But when you just say that we're getting rid of the memo because it doesn't meet our exacting standards, it implies that you're getting rid of the memo because it's true. And you feel bad that your true feelings about conservative Catholics have now been made public. I have not seen any press release from the FBI, and I hope to see it, in which people are removed from the FBI, say, we don't want you there anymore. If you view your job as not one in which we're going to track down people who are counterfeiting or tracking down people who are selling fentanyl to the state, but instead are going to spend your resources monitoring conservative Catholics, that is of great concern. And make my word, like I said, I personally am not Catholic, but I will tell you, after seeing that memo from the FBI, if I was a member of an Assembly of God church, a Wisconsin Lutheran Synod church, most Baptist churches, of evangelical churches, Orthodox Jewish, I would be scared at where our country is going. And I insist that the FBI open up their files and tell us exactly who drafted these repugnant memos and whose idea was it, out of Washington, out of Richmond, who knows, that the FBI should be involved in targeting conservative Catholics. And I hope that the rest of the people of this body, including my leadership team, talks about it every day we get back until we get a better explanation from the FBI exactly what was going on and who in particular were the employees of the FBI who thought it was a good idea to monitor conservative Catholics, of which apparently one piece of evidence is attending Latin Mass. Now, I think we should also have a look at a story that began about 2 years ago, but it's kind of where we can kind of follow it along and see the degree to which President Biden and his administration are following demands made of them about 2 years ago. About 2 years ago, when the Senate was 50-50 with a Democrat vice president, U.S. Senators Tammy Duckworth and Mazie Hirono said that they were tired of confirming any white men appointed by President Biden. That's kind of a scary thing. Actually, they said it would be okay with confirming white men if they were gay. After 2 years were up, a legal journal did a study and found out that 2 years into the Biden administration, only 5 out of 97 judges were white men. We were able to determine that one of the 5 was gay. We don't know about the others. I think that's a little bit scary. I think if you're going to take the legal community collectively, remembering that you don't really appoint people to the federal judiciary when they're 26 years old. So when we look at maybe the legal community of people age 95 and up and said we were going to try to find the best judges we can, I would think more than 5 out of 97 judges would be white men who are not gay. But that's what we have, actually probably less than 5, 4 or 3, whatever. But I think it's something for the media to pick up on and ask some more questions here. You know, does the Biden administration really feel that only 5 of 97 judicial openings would be best filled with a white man? I would be asking questions since apparently Senators Duckworth and Senators Hirono felt it was important to give preference to gay men over straight men. I would ask how many of the 5 few white men were appointed were gay and how many were straight. I think that's something that the media was on the board. They would be asking that question. We do know that there are strong elements on the left that don't like traditional families. You know, we know the close ties between the Democrat Party and Black Lives Matter and how early on Black Lives Matter said they don't like Western prescribed traditional families. I always object to the way Black Lives Matter say that because I think we have traditional families with a mom and dad at home through all sorts of different backgrounds. It's not just in Western Europe, but they themselves describe it as Western prescribed traditional families. So I hope that beyond this rather obscure legal journal, we would have a little more investigation by the press and perhaps investigation by some of the relevant committees. Are we continuing down the path of apparently actively discriminating against white heterosexual men? I mean, that's clearly what these 2 senators wanted, and I think it's very concerning that they're getting exactly what they wanted. It's like the Biden administration is just following their tune. So hopefully we will see more articles about this in the paper over the next couple weeks. And hopefully, if I do not get what I want here, hopefully Republican leadership will weigh in and force the Biden administration to comment on this issue and the backgrounds of some of their appointees. Given the obsession or the apparent view of the world, the Biden administration does view people as just representative of where their ancestors lived, 200 years ago. And I don't view it that way. I think most Americans view people as individuals, and if you ask, what do you think about John, or what do you think about Mary, or what do you think about Peter, you talk about their views on things. Maybe you talk about their upbringing or where they grew up, but you don't say the most important thing about that person is whether your ancestors are from Spain or England or India or wherever. Unfortunately, the Biden administration basically seems to throw away the rest of the resume and focus primarily on ethnic background, and that's unfortunate. One way we can see it is in their proposed budget, they seem to put diversity police in all of their different agencies. and it's something that's growing more and more in our universities as well. Some of these diversity police are making $200,000 a year, which is something that scares me in its own right, because if you make $200,000 a year, a lot of people say anything. And if your $200,000 a year job depends on the rather warped idea that we should hire or fire or promote people based on where their great-great-grandparents are from, these people are going to be running around the country telling businesses, telling students that when you meet somebody, the most important thing is their ethnic background. We have seen the result of having these people running around the university and the obsession with this view of the world. So we did have a hearing this week looking at universities, and we'll talk about